Hello children, it's Rabbi Lister here. I wanted to tell you another evening story, and this one happened a very long time ago. It was over 3,300 years ago when the Jewish people were living in Egypt, and they were having a very hard time of it because the Egyptians enslaved the Jews and made them work for them very hard all day long. And the king of Egypt, King Pharaoh, Paro, went even further than that, and he decided one day that all the Jewish baby boys who were born would have to be thrown into the river Nile, the mighty river that runs through the middle of Egypt. And of course, all the Jewish parents did their best to try to hide their boys from the Egyptian policemen who were trying to catch them and throw them in the river. And one such couple were Amram and Yocheved. They had a little boy, and they hid him for 3 months, until when he was 3 months old, they could no longer hide him because he was too big, and they decided that they would put him in a basket at the side of the river Nile and leave him floating there, and they would hope that Hashem would care for him and that all would be well. So Yocheved, the little boy's mummy, took the baby, wrapped him up and put him in a little basket and left the basket floating at the side of the river Nile. Well, the little boy had an older sister called Miriam, and she was very kind and very brave, and she didn't want to leave her brother floating there all by himself. So she decided that she would wait and watch and see what would happen and make sure he would be okay. Just after Yocheved, his mummy, had left him floating in the river, Paro's daughter, Bitya, came down to wash in the river, and she saw this little basket floating there. And she was curious, and she looked inside and said, "It must be one of the baby Jewish boys. His parents must have left him there because they didn't want him to get caught by the Egyptian policeman." It would have been so easy for Bitya to tip the baby into the river. After all, that was the law that her own father, the king, had sent out across the whole country. But no, she decided that wasn't the right thing to do. And she said, "I'm going to have this boy for myself. And I'm going to care for him and bring him up." And so straight away she decided, "I better feed him." And she called one of the Egyptian women who could feed a baby and asked her to feed this baby boy. But the baby boy wouldn't take food from her because one day he was going to speak to Hashem, and that mouth that was going to speak to Hashem couldn't take food from an Egyptian lady who was so cruel as to want to kill the Jewish baby boys, as most of the Egyptians did. Well, what was going to happen to this baby boy? If he couldn't have any food, he was going to die. At that moment, Miriam, his sister, who had been watching all this time, had a brilliant idea, and very bravely and very kindly, she ran over to Princess Bitya and said, "I can help. I can find you a Jewish lady who can feed this baby boy." And Princess Bitya said, "That's a great idea. Bring her at once." So Miriam, very excited, ran home and called to her mother Yocheved and said, Mummy, they're looking for a Jewish lady to feed my baby brother, your son. Can you come along and care for him?" So Yocheved hurried along, and she fed the baby boy, and all was well. And when he was old enough, he moved into Pharaoh's palace, and he was cared for by Princess Bitya, and she gave him a special name. She said, "Meshitihu." I pulled him out of the water So I'm going to call him Moshe, which sounds like Meshitihu. And that was Moshe, that was Moses, who helped to save the Jewish people from Egypt and brought them out across the Red Sea to Mount Sinai to receive the Torah from Hashem. And his life was saved by his sister Miriam. Take care, children. Be safe.